Well, hello. Thank you again for joining. This is our monthly career development webinar at the Yale School of Management. So welcome alumni, students, and friends of Yale. I'm Cindy Cornell. I'm the career coach for working professionals in the Career Development Office, and I am really excited to talk to you today about redefining your career in 2021. Few people are following a single defined career path, and along the way, we're going to leverage our experiences in different ways. And today we're going to talk about that. You may be wanting to affect a pivot in a major way in your career. And also, I'll speak to the fact that we are all affected by a changing world. And we're all asked to leverage our skills differently, maybe than we even did a year ago, in terms of what we're doing, how we're working, and those types of things. So sometimes we call it a pivot or a relaunch, and really it's honestly just ongoing career management. So I'm happy to talk with you about that today and give you some perspective for 2021. First things first, if you could focus on our time together, that would be great. I will have time for questions today, so please ask those in the Q&A. And if you do have questions that you want follow-up on personally, please don't hesitate to reach out, those of you who are SOM students or EMBA students or alumni, to make a personal coaching appointment with me. A recording will be available as well. And also, I'd love to ask you to take a few moments after the session when you receive the request for feedback. I do very much appreciate your feedback and your points of view. I'm here to do this for you. So want to make sure that if there's anything I could be doing differently or better, that we actually incorporate that into the future. And I do also enjoy learning what you found useful about these topics as well. In terms of what we're going to talk about today, we'll take some perspective taking in terms of where we are and where we've come from. We'll start to talk about stepping forward in terms of this idea of redefining. And then I'll give you some tools and ways to think about research and how to find out more about what you might want to do next in your world. And then we'll kick into the wrap up and resources share, and also move into space for Q&A. So looking back at the last year, it's been really challenging for a lot of people. Companies appropriately took a step back at the onset of the pandemic because they needed to both take care of their own people, and they also needed to figure out how to compete in the post-pandemic world. And many of us who've been around the block a few times know from experience that what's expected on the backside of a recession is different from what was done before, what was needed or demanded in the earlier stages before things changed. So successful job seekers in this last year were those people who differentiated themselves by showing, both by their behavior and their intentional tailored language, that they were able to play a role in innovating towards the new future, architecting successful plans, kind of through and beyond the current market disruption. There was quite a bit of hiring that picked up at the back half of the year and continues. It takes some work to get there, though. Diligent research about every opportunity, while considerable work, really facilitated translation of that prior experience into what was needed in the future in terms of rapport building stories that helped people to really understand how they were going to fit together into the new world. I share on this page a clip from one of our alumni, Jeff Schwartz. He's just written a book called Work Disrupted that is all about what's happened in the last year. And he also talks about in that book how people might move forward. So with disruption comes also a lot of opportunity. So I want to actually just acknowledge that if you're not feeling great about kind of where you are and you're tired, we learned a lot this last year about things like, surge capacity and depletion. We were running on adrenaline, a lot of us, for a long time. And if you're tired, that's why. We've been dealing with so much change and working not from home, but at home, surrounded by our families, and dealing with, perpetually changing calendars, and some of us lonely, some of us at home by ourselves. So that's been challenging as well. And then, racial injustice and political unrest and general economic depression and recession, and it's been a lot. So I want to just kind of put that out there to say, if you're tired and if you're feeling discouraged, There's a reason for that. And I want to hopefully have you leave the session today feeling a bit more hopeful about what's coming. So I started to talk about this a little bit. Everything has changed. Some jobs have gone the way of stockbrokers and elevator operators. They just don't even exist anymore. Our boundaries have been challenged. Our coworkers are in our homes, and our offices are where we eat and sleep. For those people who share space with other people, that's challenging. Or for some people who don't have what they would consider to be professional space, that's even more challenging in creating incremental stress. So a lot of things are going on for us, and we are needing to learn how to be at work differently, and even having boundaries about being at work versus at home and focused on other things. So lots of opportunity to learn and grow in 2020 and beyond. And the other thing I just want to, kind of speak about is thinking about this idea that while we've all kind of experienced the same storm, it's felt different for different people. So I want to acknowledge that everybody's in flux. And if you're in a bigger boat versus a smaller boat, the storm definitely feels differently. Um, the changes that are coming and the changes that have happened already were coming already. So I want to just kind of point that out as well. They just happened a lot faster because of the disruption. And this is not unusual. We've had disruptions in the past. And this is just kind of food for thought that we are resilient, and there's good work ahead for all of us, and new work and different work, as long as you're actually excited about adopting a learning mindset. What are some other things that are needed for anybody, whether you're looking to stay in the current role that you're in, or whether you're looking to move into a totally different role? We do need some skills, human skills. Some people are worried that AI is going to take all the jobs away. There's actually going to be new jobs, and we're going to interact with that AI, artificial intelligence data differently to do more greater things. That can be truly transformative to the world. I get really excited about this when I think about it through the context of the SOM mission around educating leaders for business and society. And if you're here, I would hope that you are a lifelong learner and you're excited to some extent about all of this change that's happening. Those who weren't already thinking about the future of work, right? This kind of pulled it in. I also want to kind of share with you the idea there's lots of resources out there to learn about what might be needed. One of the resources that I peeked at to pull some of these skills was the World Economic Forum report about the future of jobs report, and some of these skills are actually listed out in what will be needed in 2025. So they're actually even thinking further ahead. So if you've not read resources like that, as you're thinking about pivots and changing and evolving in your own career, I do encourage you to kind of lift your head up and look around and see how even different industries are going to be interacting with one another differently. In terms of stepping forward now that we've kind of looked at where we are and what we need to think about, I do want to step into this area of redefining your career and acknowledging that many of us are going to have many careers and multi-chapter lives. I had a conversation this morning with someone I've known for a very long time and who knew me when I was an accountant. And we were talking about some of the roles that I had taken, and the involvement that he'd had in helping me both to transition jobs earlier in my career and help me to build teams. And that was a different chapter. And I can still think about how all of those things that I did there in those spaces have informed and influenced who I am and how I lead and coach today. So it's not that we're leaving things behind, we're building and evolving and using these tools differently. So defining means to state or describe exactly the nature, the scope, or the meaning of, or make an outline of, delineate. So as we're thinking about what's next, it's really incumbent on each of us to have an opinion, a point of view, not about, well, what could I do, but rather stepping forward in terms of defining what your offer is and what you believe you'd like to do. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go on today in the slides about some of the ways that you can do some research and evaluate what's coming for you. You have a strong foundation already. And if this is your first webinar, welcome. And if it's not, you've probably seen some of these topics before. Amusingly, I had a very similar conversation last May, and so much has changed also since last May. Last May, we talked about reimagining your career in 2020. These webinars are all on the alumni portal under career resources, and they're also on the Yale School of Management YouTube page under the videos. So if you are wanting to go back and review any of these topics, I'm not going to get into a lot of these tactical items today. And I just want to remind you that they're there for you. So you can go through and refresh your memory and continue to evolve and grow in some of these ideas. As I said a few minutes ago, career management is lifelong. So even though you've done it before, it might be helpful sometimes to go back and watch something again, look at some of the frameworks again, and kind of use that as the crucible to retool your resume or your LinkedIn profile, or just to practice some new stories. So again, lots of change coming. And I do want to, for those of you who might be feeling anxious or unhappy, or even angry about current circumstances, I'd love to share with you a testimonial, if you will. It was an email I received on December 30th from somebody who I'd never met. And this person said, "I don't believe our paths crossed during my time at Yale, but our mutual friend passed your webinars along to me while I was job hunting this year. And I just wanted to say thank you. When you first said that I deserved a job that felt fulfilling, I was angry. I struggled to believe that in light of how hard the job search felt. I thought, sure, that's great, but I have student loans and bills to pay. Fulfillment is a luxury. But I kept it in mind and I kept listening, and slowly my search changed. I sent out fewer, more thoughtful resumes. I paid more attention to the gut feeling I got when, and I knew how to answer and paid more attention in interviews to those things that I knew how to answer well. And when I couldn't, I found colleagues to help me to answer them better, to practice with. I spent time really thinking about my own story, and I wanted to share it in ways that would be legible and engaging. When work finally all came together this month, I found I was in 3 processes with 3 different companies, all of whom fit my baseline criteria. I wasn't operating from a place of scarcity. I was operating from a place of confidence. And I could tell all 3 of them when they asked me that while I was in other processes, I was also only in conversations with people and organizations I wanted to be talking to. The long and the short of it is, thank you. You set forth a challenge and offered me skills that fundamentally changed what I thought was possible for my job search, and I'm extremely grateful. I checked back in with them today to make sure it was okay for me to share some of that language, and they said, absolutely, if this is useful to others, they're happy to share that. And they also said my work continues to be really surprising and fulfilling, and I'm constantly finding new things to be excited about and learn. And I'm hoping for all of that for all of us. So if we'll move on from here, just reminding you that you have a lot of resources to go back to. And to my colleague, Kayla, who's in our alumni relations office, thank you so much for putting that into the chat, the link where you can find those. It's not possible to do these without people like Kayla making all of this happen behind the scenes. So again, I want to acknowledge that we succeed together, not individually. So moving ahead, we have some work to do. In terms of pivoting, in terms of changing, we tend to look for what we know in the places we've looked before, posting for resumes, thinking about jobs that we know exist, and the world has changed. So if you're seeking to pivot into a new space and you're looking for what you already know about, we're probably missing some things. So it's maybe not our best strategy. So I really want you to kind of be thoughtful about what you're seeking and think about what you want to contribute to the world and with who you'd like to do that. Because not all the people that are out there are your people. I had another conversation earlier today with someone who was really excited about a role and then got in there and found that the way people operated and managed in that company was very inconsistent with their values. And they wound up, deciding to make a move. And sometimes that's the best thing for you, so that you can actually be in a state and a space, a mind space, to really be thoughtful about what is most important to you. So not everybody has the luxury to do that, and sometimes when you do, it's not a bad thing to think about. So doing the work, how do we do the work? I want to encourage you to think about growth mindset. That is a term that is made popular by a researcher called Carol Dweck. If you want a little bit more about growth mindset, you can go back and peek at her TED Talk, and you'll find it quite easily. Carol Dweck, Carol Dweck. If you Google it, and just to give you some frameworks for growth mindset, I want you to be really excited about feedback. Feedback isn't failure. Feedback is information with which we can actually refine our messaging or refine our hypotheses. I want you to think about being relational, not transactional. I'll tell you, when people reach out to me and say, would you please share with me this contact? Would you please, kind of connect me with this person? I don't want you to reach out to them and I want you to think about this through your own network and just want to talk to somebody about a job. I want you to kind of have a conversation with them that builds trust and rapport so that they're willing to do more with you. In a couple of months, we're going to talk about negotiation. Rule number one in negotiation is the person on the other side of the table needs to like you. And if somebody doesn't know you at all, we haven't established that baseline rapport and trust. So relational is really important. I want you to be focusing on solutions, not problems. Again, that's the idea that was shared in that testimonial a few minutes ago around confidence and abundance as opposed to scarcity. What is it we're trying to call into the world as opposed to what is it that we're trying to avoid and fix? And I also want you to kind of remember this idea of adaptive and learning as opposed to being stuck. If you're not where you want to be, again, if we can lift our head up and say, this isn't quite where I'm happy right now, and this isn't working for me for a variety of reasons. One, I want you to be really clear what's not working for you so you can be clear then about what you are seeking. And then I want you to kind of step into that space of how can I? Because if you're here, I know you've already accomplished some great things and challenging things. And while it's going to be a little bit of work, I know that you're going to be able to achieve something even bigger than what you might have even imagined in this moment today. As we think about skills that I mentioned a few minutes ago on the other slide, and as we think about learning what's needed, you have stories to share about each of those things, about where you've been successful in the past. And if you don't, those might be some things to focus on and explore. And again, we talked last year in one of the webinars about powerful storytelling. Those are the ideas that are going to engage people and have them curious to learn more about you. So anyway, this is how I'd like you to show up as we're thinking about how to articulate our skills and our prior outcomes and successes in language that helps us to pivot into new places and to grow into new roles. So that's how you show up. Then what do we need to do? Well, first of all, just let you know that there's a lot of information on the internet. It's there for the picking. And I will also share with you that it's crazy the number of people that have conversations with me that haven't actually done this research, that aren't familiar with some of the concepts that are actually already out there for them. Companies want you to present themselves or present yourselves in ways that makes it easy for them to recognize the right people that are great fits for their organizations. Hiring pages tell you what to do. And here's a couple of examples. Amazon has a page that goes through in detail information about online applications, assessments that you might be expected to take, phone interviews, in-person or Zoom interviews, common interview topics, frequently asked questions about the process, and even things like what it means to be customer-centric. And I loved this, how we are peculiar, because they are different and unusual, and they want to know that you know how they're unique and that you want to be part of that too. Another one, if you're ever looking at Amazon, please don't miss their leadership principles. They love their leadership principles. And I had a conversation with somebody at one point that wasn't aware that they even had them. Those are foundational to how they actually interview people. And you want to have stories that demonstrate how you would actually show up in their organization according to how they define their leadership principles. Deloitte has a wonderful item on their page about how to get your resume read, which is a how-to of what they're looking for and how to frame your prior experience in ways that makes it easy for them to see if you're actually a part of their, a good person for their team. Johnson and Johnson, which isn't on this slide, they have a credo. Again, you want to know what that credo is because it's really important to those employees and how they think about their work. Bank of America shares values and purpose. Microsoft and Google both have missions, and while they're similar companies, why they exist and their expression of their missions are very different. So again, I want you to be really clear about what companies you're interested in and why. That might even prompt you to think about Simon Sinek's TED Talk about start with why. Why this company, why this organization? If you can't answer that really clearly and you're not articulate about how your prior skills fit into what their current needs are, it's a non-starter for many companies. Research also reveals culture. Beyond the individual roles, I want to make sure that you're saying yes to companies where you're going to thrive, not just where you can kind of get through. And in those spaces, you can also figure out kind of who they are and what they care about, how they work together, and what they consider fun. Because, I'm sharing here a couple of companies, McKinsey and Siemens. You might not think that the way McKinsey works is fun, and you might be really much more excited about the innovative technologies of Siemens. And while they are different types of companies in terms of energy research and consulting, you might have very similar jobs or similar tasks in each company. It's just expressed very differently. So just be really clear about what you're looking for and where else might there be opportunities. Careers are long and the world is small. I share that often in conversations with people. You're going to get there through people. So you may or may not know people in your target companies. You're going to find people in your target companies. We'll figure out a way to connect with people. And there's lots of different ways to do that through alumni networks, through LinkedIn, through following the company and seeing who's posting. There's different industry groups. So there will be a way to find somebody there. And again, if we're thinking about a proactive networking approach, as you're looking to kind of create a pivot, you'll be learning from people, not just replying to a job post, kind of hoping that you're getting the language right and hoping that you understand what's going on. You're doing the research about the companies that you're interested in and the industries you're interested in advance, so that when the industry or the opportunities pop up, when the role profiles pop up, they're there, and you're able to respond in a very tailored way, quickly and expeditiously, in ways that make your application stand out. So when I say things like reconnaissance versus supposition, we're not guessing at what they want. You're actually figuring out what they want through conversations, and you're doing that research. And sometimes it's not just about that company; it might be about competitive sets, and that's useful too, as it shows that you are informed and could help them to be successful in a potentially crowded marketplace or a competitive marketplace. As you're going through all of this, remember also that you have so much to share with other people. You have contacts, and I'll share with you when I was starting my coaching practice. I'd left corporate America and I started coaching on my own. When I was looking to grow my business, I talked to lots of people, and I would tell them that I am talking to lots of people. Who do you want to meet? What are the challenges that you're facing? Because not only did it give me an opportunity to show them what it's like to kind of be in a coaching conversation with me and helping them to think through some of their problems, demonstrating that through our conversation, through our breakfast or our lunch, I was also offering for them to use my network in ways that might keep me higher up in their thoughts as they encounter people who might be good connections for me. So remember that you always, always have something to offer. In terms of some ways to connect with people, again, as we're networking, be curious. I'm contemplating what's next. I've appreciated something about what you've shared. I'm curious about, I want to learn more. Here's some language that you might start to adopt and play with. And when you ask these things, they're not big lifts for people, especially acknowledgement. People rarely don't say yes to somebody who's acknowledging them. And you're not also asking for a job. It's not transactional in a way that I'm interested in that job and can we talk about it? Because that's a sure way for a no if they either don't know anything about that department, or they don't know who's the hiring manager, or they're just too busy to go figure that stuff out. So you want to think about, what is it possible that that person will say yes to, especially if they're a new person or you haven't connected lately. Again, building trust and rapport. When they know you, they're more likely to want to do more for you. So again, think about that. And they also need to know that you will represent their brand well if they're putting you forward to other people in the organization. So even if there is a role that you're interested in, that's not what I would suggest you lead with. When you're thinking about how to communicate, I want you to be curious. You have a hypothesis that a role at this company seems like it could be a good fit, but you don't know yet. So as you're trying to think about how to apply or if to apply, you might want some information that they can offer about their own experience in the company. It may not be the department, maybe it is if they have a direct connect to that, but if you're asking for their point of view, their experience, they're going to be more likely to share that with you. And again, if we're going back through this, looking at it through the perspective of a pivot, you're getting more information to help you understand if this really is something that you're going to be happy in. Because if you've not done it before, you don't know. So this is all the research and the learning, and all of it, even if you're talking to lower level people that may be subordinate to or in adjacent functions, they're going to be able to give you perspective that's going to help you to understand how you would be interacting within the organization. So be curious and have lots of conversations. Sometimes you just can't find anything about a company, and that's okay. You might do your due diligence and even reach out to me, and we can kind of try to figure out what we can find. You still want to think about an opening they can say yes to, some personal acknowledgement or some connection that you have that's in common, where you came from, what you did in the past, what kind of jobs you might have held similarly in the past, something to connect with, and then let them know that you're interested in their industry. Again, it's not a big lift. And you want to also then let them know that you actually do have an understanding of the market. How do you ask the questions? Think about what you've been reading, or how you've formulated your hypotheses and the things that you'd like them to comment on for you. Have some ideas about why you might be a good fit if they ask you, because the surest way for somebody to say no is to simply put this out there that I'm looking for a new job and your company seems cool and can you talk to me? There's not a lot there that's going to help me to understand that this is going to be a productive use of either of our time. So really think about that. The other thing I want you to contemplate is, if you can't find anything out about this company that you might have some interest in, talking to them and sharing that, for example, that X company organizes their work this way. I'm curious, is your structure similar? Is useful, because it does show that you do care and you have done the work. This is useful sometimes when you're dealing in healthcare, for example, where functionally we're getting the same kind of work done across different hospital units or organizations. How they do the work or how they communicate or interact with one another might be different. So letting people know that you're informed is a good way for them to actually say, yeah, I'd like to have some more conversations with you. So we're coming near to the end of my slides. So I just wanted to share that and encourage you to share some questions to the extent that you have them as you're thinking about kind of where you came from and where you'd like to go. I'm really happy to answer whatever questions you have today in terms of what steps you might take next. I will share with you some things that I've been looking at lately. 2 of these books are older and 2 of these books are brand new. And I'll share with you why I'm sharing them and why I think they could be useful for you. Range is at the bottom of this pile. That came out in 2019. And It's about, the subtitle is Why Generalists Triumph in the Specialized World. And if you think about the world today and how much it's changed, your ability to pivot, your ability to take in information from disparate sources and synthesize it and see new possibilities in ways that companies haven't, that you're able to, kind of be creative and resourceful is really, really valuable. So the challenge is some people who have what are considered maybe portfolio careers, or I know that in a prior role, when I was still in corporate, I was referred to as the utility player. I was the person that they could send out pretty much anywhere to go figure out what needed to happen. And then I could, pull in the right resources. I was kind of like an internal consultant. Those skill sets, it's kind of hard because nobody's looking for somebody that can do everything. We still really need to be clear about what our offer is moving forward. This book, Range, actually gives language to how to think about it, how to speak about your story. And there's some information that's rooted in science there too that can be useful for you. So that's a book that I would encourage for those folks who are having some trouble figuring out how to articulate who they are and what they've done relative to something new. David Brooks' book, The Second Mountain, The Quest for a Moral Life, is also a good one. You might know him already. He had a really wonderful TED Talk in 2014. Are you living for your resume or your eulogy? This book delves into that a little bit deeper. As you're thinking about what comes next for you in your career, you want to be thoughtful about how it's going to actually make your life better. And are you actually fulfilled? Are you actually engaged in activities that you're really happy about? The next book on that list, the book Social Chemistry, going from the bottom up, that also just came out by our own SOM professor Marissa King, and that is decoding the patterns of human connection. And that's kind of an interesting question. As I went back earlier and said, what do you want to do, and with whom do you want to do it? How do you want to connect with people? So there's some good research and information in there helping you to reframe how you think about relationships and networks that might support your personal relationships, your work life, and even to accelerate or amplify your global impact, which for those of us who are excited about learning and impacting both business and society, that's gold. And finally, at the top, I mentioned Work Disrupted already by SOM's own Jeff Schwartz, alum. Just came out. He talks about opportunity and resilience and growth in the accelerated future of work, and some different ways of thinking about how work has been disrupted and in what ways that you want to actually think about it in the future so that you can be an active, happy participant in all of that. So again, I will encourage you to think about what your questions are, and let's start queuing those up because it's almost that time. Key takeaways for today. Again, if you're looking to pivot, if you're looking for something new, or if you're looking even simply to accelerate or take on some new roles, you need to know what you're looking for. Again, if you show up and you say, here's what I've done in the past, what can I do? You're not going to get very far very fast. In order to kind of come up with your offer and make really great connections, you need to actually start with really, really solid research. And hopefully I've given you some new ways to think about research. And if you want more, again, you can reach out to me personally, or if you want me to kind of challenge and build your own plan forward, happy to do that. I do want you to always remember that you are going to succeed with, and to really be in that place of joining up with others and not only being a recipient of help, so asking and giving people an opportunity to help you, but also being out there and consistently offering, even while you might be actively or happy in a job. Staying in touch with that network may give you opportunities to help other people. And as I mentioned, career management is ongoing. So perspective taking and relationship growth and network management and clarification of long-term and short-term goals are things that you should be scheduling time for always. And that is why I said wash, rinse, and repeat, because even while you're in a role, these are things that you want to create and hold time for. In terms of wrap up and resources, again, I think Kayla had already shared a link for our career resources. So there is the link again. And then also, I'd just like to encourage you to take advantage of all alumni events, not just my career events. We have lots of things that are going on all the time. And just to stay up with how things are changing and evolving in the world, inside and outside of your own areas is powerful for you. So we are now to the interactive part today, to Q&A. So I think there's some things that are popping in here, and Kayla, I always appreciate when you help me as well to get through here. So let's see what we've got. In a competitive marketplace where there are so many people with the exact years of experience, education they're looking for, how do you convince people in new industries that your experience is transferable, let alone make you the best person to hire? So yeah, there's lots of people that might have the exact same years of experience or the exact same education. The opportunity here, Trent, is to think about what makes you distinct or different. And I promise you that most of the people that are submitting resumes aren't doing the work to really tailor those applications to what is specifically needed by that company. When I was joining SOM, it was important for me not just to think about, kind of coaching, but why am I here and how do I create value for the organization? What motivates the organization to want to have my role? And really understanding how do I create value. So in your organization or organizations you're thinking about, really kind of thinking about what does my day look like? What does a Tuesday afternoon look like? Or in 3 months, what value will I have created? And what can I accrete to the organization in terms of perspective? Or you might have the same number of years of experience, but what you've done and where you've come from is really, really different. As we think about other topics like kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and as I shared earlier, this idea about the fact that we've all experienced a similar storm, though very differently, because all of our boats are a little bit different. Some of them are, better for stormy weather, and it's been, not pleasant, but not uncomfortable. And for other people, it's been really scary and uncomfortable. Those perspectives that we bring are valuable as well. So you're not the same. And if you need some help in trying to figure out how you are unique and special and different, I'm happy to kind of, shake your thinking up in that regard. But you are, and that's the work that a lot of people, haven't engaged in, and it's so important. Another question that's come up, hopefully that's helped you with that one. Actually, let me say one last thing on that. You're not the best person for every role. So that's the other thing I'd kick back over to you, and that I might ask in a coaching conversation, where I'd say, why are you the best person for this company? And why are you the best person for this role? And that is, kind of, that's a place to start. And then we go back and we think about how do we articulate that in powerful ways and resonant ways? And I might even refer you back to last month's webinar where we talked about powerful intention setting, and you can think about wild success in a conversation. How do you want people to feel, and what do you want them to know about you, and how do you want them to believe, how you might be able to add value or work well with their organization? So really, it takes some really thoughtful time to put together that application package that gets them to want to say that first small yes. Let me actually look at this resume a little bit more carefully, or let me actually call them in. Please don't assume that you're the best person for all jobs. So that's where I might push it back to you to say, are you clear that you're only talking to people that you're excited to talk to? And what is it that you've learned about them that you know that they're the right people? That's all going to come up that's going to come very valuable when you're in the conversations, in the interviews, and telling stories that they're going to be able to connect with. Another question: in my next role, how should I approach developing my team to meet rapidly changing demands and evolving opportunities? That's a really great question. I love that question from a perspective of leadership. How do you help your team to stay up with all of this change? Because other people who might not have had this SOM experience or have these contacts it might be differently uncomfortable for them, or they may not be as accustomed to being in this space of vulnerability and curiosity. I love vulnerability in business because that's where we connect, right? We're not all experts in everything. So, I'd say the first thing as a leader is to have conversations with people and ask them what their experience is, and um, to think about what they're interested in learning about. Because as situations change, it may be that certain people have unspoken aspirations that you might be able to help shepherd them into, or to give them some information around. But that, I think that the biggest suggestion I can give there is to share when you see conversations or articles about changing work. Ask for feedback, engage in dialogue, ask questions about what could we be doing differently, or what do we think the world might look like, or really taking perspective from different places. And then kind of encouraging that dialogue in ways that people don't feel judged or wrong. But really kind of bringing that all together is so important, because leaders that are trying to lead from the top don't have perspective that they need to understand what's happening at the lower levels, or middle levels, those types of things. So those are just a couple of ideas I'd say around leading through this change. Also letting them know that you're uncomfortable and that you're challenged and that you need them, because the leaders that are kind of just more, kind of autocratic aren't the ones that are going to have those really wonderful, collaborative, inclusive, creative ideas bubbling up from different places. And we are always stronger together. Are there, another question here, are there resources, templates you recommend for getting organized, taking inventory at the outset of a search of skills and intentions of unique offerings? This is where I would actually encourage you to go back and have a peek at some of the other webinars that I've done previously. One of the things that I always ask people at the start is, what do you love doing? What gives you energy? And it doesn't have to be specifically a job responsibility. I encourage you even to think about, kind of going deeper and understanding why. An example I give sometimes is that if I meet a couple of people who might all be little league coaches, they're all there doing the same thing, but for very different reasons. Some are doing it because they have kids on the field and they want to spend time with those children. Some have had a coaching experience in the past and they really found it useful and they want to give back. Other people are there because they just love the game. Other people want to teach kids how to play. Other people want to teach kids how to be disciplined, and to practice skills and to excel. So really understanding what your motivation is, not just what you did or what you like doing, but what's underneath why that for you. What's cool when you pivot or as jobs change, you may be able to bring some of those elements back into other parts of a job, or introduce new ideas that are tangential and accretive to the roles that you're already taking on. So this is something else I would say as you're thinking about, evolving. I often encourage people to say, if you're stuck about what to do today, let's think about what you want to do in 5 years or 10 years. And we can then go in and say, what skills am I going to need there? So as you're kind of doing this brainstorm, and, in terms of a template, all of our brains work differently. It's kind of like, if we looked at anyone's computer, it would be hard to find, the same things, because we're all going to file them differently. In terms of a template, I more normally give people questions and you can write them down in whatever ways that you want to. I do encourage you though to please write them down, because we get confused in our brains when we have maybe mutually exclusive ideas adjacent to, in terms of thoughts. They're not all true at the same time, yet when we think of them in proximity, we believe them to be true. So seeing them kind of in black and white on a piece of paper allows us to relate with them differently, and really test those assumptions or hypotheses to say, is that true? Or to see those inconsistencies. So again, there's a lot of ideas and suggestions, tactical and strategic as well, in the prior webinars that we referenced today. So I have a start there around diving into clarifying your offer, for example. how do you actually talk about what you've done in the past and what you might like to do next? So hopefully that's helpful there. Um, I've been reconnecting with former internship managers who are senior leaders in my sector. They have all been very supportive and have asked how they could be helpful. I can't think of what I should say other than asking them to be on the lookout in case there are roles that fit the interest I've shared, or making a connection in the future if they're connected to someone working at an organization I'm interested in. Is there another way? Okay, so let's actually think about this in terms of what's your goal here? So you're looking for an opportunity. It also sounds like you're looking to learn. Um, it might not be just asking for contacts or asking for kind of those connections when there's an opportunity. It might actually be asking them to connect you with people from whom you might learn more, or making referrals of articles that they see that could be of interest to you. It could also be you actually sharing with them, understanding what their roles are and what they're responsible for, where you're showing them that you're reading these things and I'm sending this to you because. So here now we're going two ways, and you're reinforcing the fact that you're very serious about moving into these areas. Or you might read an article that is of import to the area that you want to move into, and asking them for their point of view on that, or if they are aware of other people that you might learn more about that thing specifically. So that gives you a different way into some companies. Maybe it might open up some doors that you wouldn't otherwise have seen. The other thing I'd say is to leverage LinkedIn and know if somebody asks you, how can I help? You might have had already a peek at their own connections to say, well, it seems that you're connected with these folks, and I'm curious. I've done some research on these companies, and I've showed you how to do that. And I'm intrigued by, would you be willing to make an introduction to this person? So there's no job here. It's just you're looking to learn more about the industry, the competitive landscape, different ways people are doing things, different strategies people are focusing on. So it doesn't have to be about the job. When you make it just about the job, it's not relational. That gets back into transactional. So I really want to encourage you to think about, again, that idea that careers are long and the world is small. And that, another idea is that oftentimes really cool job opportunities don't even come from people directly in your field. It's often that people that are adjacent to or aware of who you are and that care about you might make referrals to people as well. So keeping in touch with your sector is useful and valuable. And think about who might know people outside of the people that you know directly. Um, Maybe somebody that you roomed with in undergrad has people in their network that they're willing to actually introduce you to. Again, you can use some of those other strategies to find those introductions as well. So hopefully that's a different way to think about connecting. And then also always offering up your own network as well. How can I help you? I'm talking to lots of people. Is there something or someone I can kind of support you around meeting or understanding better? Another question here. If a role you're interviewing for has a matrix management and the two managers seem to be only partially aligned, is that a red flag? How do you figure out which one has the lead or more power? Well, I think he answered your question already. That was a suggestion wrapped in a question. Yeah, if you're getting a gut feeling that there's misalignment, there's probably misalignment, and it's going to be a bit of a challenging environment. I would ask a bunch of questions about strategic priorities and how when there's conflicts, people actually work through those. And what are overarching principles that would help you to make a decision of what to do and when to do it and how to do it. That's a hard situation. There is a lot of matrix management out there in the world. Some of it works really, really well, and some of it doesn't work so well, depending on how it's set up and how the leaders are encouraged and managed through that. You want to understand, if you can, even elements of compensation. What drives decision making? I remember a piece of advice I gave to a young person who was moving into a role in construction, and they were more on the kind of the operations side in the field, overseeing things. I suggested that they go meet the accountants, because the accountants could help them to understand construction accounting and how decisions are made, right? So revenue recognition and things like that, those types of things, compensation, when people get paid, cash flows, those types of things impact decision making. And if you can understand that, that might also help you to understand, kind of where there's lead or power. You also can learn that by companies in terms of functions. I know that companies evolve over time and space, but I remember when I was in accounting and finance functions, and I talked to people about different companies that I had knowledge of. A company like GE had a very financially focused organization and finance-led choices, whereas Pepsi, where I also worked, had a different focus around sales and marketing, and kind of the customer being why, and really revering the sales force as being those people that were talking to the customer on a regular basis. So when we were talking about decision making in the corporate setting, it was really about how is this facilitating sales. So those are just a couple of ways to kind of start to think about this. And I would also say, kind of just because you can, kind of live through and figure out and manage through that matrixed environment doesn't mean you necessarily should. So please, kind of hold out for roles and organizations and companies where you're not necessarily spending your energy kind of on a wheel, but really working collaboratively with people to have a great impact in the world. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. So do the due diligence, and again, networks are really useful there, and you want to be thoughtful as well about how to ask smart questions, because and this is something I learned when I was actually working in Asia. A lot of my team members in Asia, in Japan specifically, when I would ask a question, they would answer me how they believed I wanted it to be. And I learned that I needed to triangulate a bit and ask a couple of different questions from different perspectives to actually see if it actually all made sense. So you want to think about how can you create or find evidence that shows you, not tells you, who they are and how they work together. And you could even ask just some direct questions about how do you work with such and such. And, I'd ask, how do you, when there's conflicting, kind of challenges, how does that work amongst the teams so that people, kind of get the right work done for the benefit of the company. So hopefully that gives you a couple of ways to start to frame that and think that through. And like I said, if you have personal questions and you want to follow up, don't hesitate to make a coaching appointment. That looks like all of the questions, I think. Kayla, did I get them all?
Yeah, that's all that I'm seeing.
Okay, great. So, what I'd take us back to again is just these key takeaways, that, as we're thinking about pivots, as we're thinking about the future of work, as we're thinking about, kind of our careers as being long and evolving and changing, because the world around us is changing. We want to know what we're looking for, doing our research and creating hypotheses and testing them, sharing our thoughts and our ideas with our networks, because they're going to help us to grow our information and our understanding, and to keep it going all the way through our careers. Because again, I said it a couple of times already, careers are long. And you might find yourself doing some really amazing things that you would never have expected, at the very start. I know I'm certainly in a very different place than I thought I would have been when I graduated from college a long time ago. So that's what I've got for today. Kayla, again, thank you for making it all work behind the scenes. Everyone who's here, thank you so much for your questions. And again, when you do get the request for feedback, I would be grateful if you would share that. I am cheering you on, and I look forward to seeing you next month in our next career webinar. Have a great day.